Welcome everyone. Today's webcast is Civil 3D template creation with the CIM Manager Suite. My name is Brian Lewandowski. I'm the Civil Product Manager here at CTC Software, and I'm going to be giving you the presentation today. What I wanted to start off with was some of the challenges with template work. Building a template, maintaining templates. These are often pretty time-consuming things. So I just wanted to go through and acknowledge some of this stuff. This stuff takes too much time. Oftentimes, many of you who are doing this work, you're also doing production work, or you just have entirely too many people to support. And it's often hard to get to some of this new or updating of templates that so many of the users are asking for, or maybe you know it's needed and they don't even know it should be in there. Template work, there's a ton of details to keep track of. There's so many styles, layers, all kinds of things in there, and it's easy to get lost in that. And so it really makes it difficult as well. The interfaces natively in Civil 3D often can be pretty slow, they can be glitchy, and it just slows down that entire template work process. Oftentimes there's unpurgeable items. Why can't I get rid of this layer? All these extra text styles, surface styles, you name it. It makes for kind of bloated templates, and it can be time consuming to clean that stuff up. And then what makes all of that even worse is it's not necessarily something we do every day, and so our inexperience with it slows it down that much more. And really the result of this is we get mediocre templates, and our production teams are slower, and we're not doing our job as CAD support or CAD managers maybe as effectively as we could. A lot of the considerations in template work: layers, line types, AutoCAD annotation styles, Civil 3D object and label styles, description keys and figure prefix databases, and then all the settings about what's defaulted for this or that. There is a lot to consider there. And so that's why in this context I want to introduce to you guys today and show how CIM Manager Suite can be used to build a new template. So if you're not familiar with the CIM Manager Suite, it's a set of CAD manager tools for Civil 3D and AutoCAD. And among other things, one of the things it does is it syncs with Excel to be managing some of those major standards interfaces like layers or key sets or figure databases. It'll also allow you to track layers and styles referencing across your templates, understanding what's being used where, in case you have some extra layers or styles that need to be purged out and you don't understand how they're being used. There's visual line type editing in there as well. And we'll go through all of this and how it works, or how this stuff fits in a new template creation process. So the workflow, I'm just going to outline this here, and then what we're going to do is jump into Civil 3D, and I'm going to walk through these steps. Now obviously I can't build an entire template ready for production, everything exactly perfect in 1 hour here. But I think you'll be surprised how much I can actually get through in 1 hour. I may not plug in all 200 of my survey codes or all 300 layers that I need, but you're going to get an idea of how quickly it can go with some of these tools plugged into the right spot. So a new template workflow, kind of a high-level thing that we're going to touch on here, and it's what I've recommended for years for organizations I've worked with in helping them build or maintain or update templates. First thing is some of those basics: line types, plot styles, blocks. Get those in place and bring them into a new empty template. And then we've got layers to consider. That's what we're going to touch on next. There's AutoCAD annotation styles like text styles or dimension styles. And then there's all the Civil 3D object and label styles. Now a lot of that stuff is just detailed work in the style interfaces, so we're not going to spend a lot of time on that. But it's obviously a huge part of your Civil 3D template. There's object layer settings, dictating what layers, Civil 3D objects that are created, what they land on. If we're working with points a lot in a survey template, we've got description keys and figure databases. And of course, we never get all that complete and set up the way we want it on the first pass. And so there's a lot of testing and tweaking of things. And finally, there's some settings where once you've got those styles and layers and everything set up the way you want to default the correct styles so that as users are executing things in the template, that default surface style or what have you shows up. So we're calling this a new template workflow. This isn't necessarily, you're new to Civil 3D. Most people were not new to it. But perhaps I've got some old templates and I want to overhaul them. And I don't know how to start with that, right? I've got some blocks and styles and fonts and things I want to use. But where do I go with that? So it's acknowledged that some of this stuff will be made. It might be scattered across different templates, different project drawings. I'll show how we bring that stuff in. Some of it's just with native tools. But some of the challenges that come with that, when you bring in old stuff, what does it do to that new clean template you're trying to create? Often makes a mess of it. CIM Manager Suite helps us address some of that. So here's a brief highlight. That whole process, where does the CIM Manager Suite come in? It comes in on the majority of all these of your template creation. Everything highlighted in blue there. So with that, we're going to jump into Civil 3D. Again, this is being recorded. Don't try to write down, take notes. I want you guys just to follow along, get an appreciation of what I can do with the CIM Manager Suite with template building, and then go do it yourself if you've got an upcoming project, a bunch of template work. And so I'm going to move through it fairly quickly. I'm not going to explain every click. I'm just going to pop right along. So what I'm going to start with is opening an ACAD DWT. And I'm going to save this as my new template. So this is an empty template with nothing in it. Okay. Now there's a number of things out there with using ACAD versus the Civil 3D out-of-the-box templates, issues with these phantom parcels. For the sake of today, we're ignoring that issue. It's another item for another day. So I've got an empty template. There are no layers in it, just some out-of-the-box text styles, not much going on in here. So the first thing we talked about is bringing in our line types. Well, let's take a look at our line types themselves. I'm going to start with the out-of-the-box ACAD LIN file and just make a copy of it, and we'll call it CTC new, for example. And all that's in here is all my text-based line types. Okay. Now, what does CIM Manager Suite do in here? Well, instead of working through a text-based interface, I can load Line Type Manager, and I can open up that CTC new LIN file, and what I get instead is a visual preview on how to work on this. Now, you might have a bunch of line types ready to go from past templates, so there may not be a lot of work required. But maybe some of it needs some adjusting. For example, this gas line, I've switched to a new font for my company standard, and now it's throwing off some of the spacing in here. This little stuff is really easy to tweak. I can come into here, and you can see I've got components that make up the line type. So I can grab this space component. Maybe this is the one. And as I change this, you'll see this spacing update down here. So I get a visual instant feedback. So it makes working with line types that much easier. I can create new ones from scratch. Or perhaps I've got some old drawings, and I don't have those line types in my LIN file. I can just go and grab those and load those into my LIN file, right? We're making a new template. We're trying to clean things up. So I can run this select button up here, and allows me to select line types from a drawing. And it found two definitions here. It says add. It means I don't have them in my current LIN file. I hit OK. and it writes those into this lin file. I adjust the scale that shows up at. We'll see those two line types. Okay, so line type management just got a whole lot easier. There's a number of companies out there that make project specific. This is just a quick aside. Project specific line types. Line type manager works really good in that situation. Oftentimes, people didn't do line type editing. They kind of hack together these line types, and it was really difficult because you were just doing it in the text editor. Well, now you can do it with this visual preview, and we just added the feature that it reads the font from the text styles in your current template, and so that it gives you a really detailed preview of what would show up. So that's line types. Let's move along. What else do we need in there? We said plot styles. Okay. I've already got an STB set up and ready to go. That's not the focus of today, but I've got an STB. This is the one we're going to use in our template. And I've got spelled out here some different plot styles. And my template is already set to an STB type template. So if you're not familiar with STBs, give them a consideration. It allows you to control things like line weight during plotting without having it be connected to colors in your drawing. It often, for multi-discipline, multi-department organizations, they can get away with one STB for all sorts of different templates instead of having this library of 15 or 20 different CTBs. So just a little recommendation there. All right, our next step, we said layers. I don't have any layers. Perhaps I've got old junk layers. I'm making a whole new overhaul, okay? If I wanted to bring some in, of course, I can use Design Center, browse out to the drawing, and I can drag those layers in here. But I'm going to show you a process where we're creating a whole new layer list from scratch. And what does that look like? Here's where CIM Manager Suite comes in again. If I click on Export DWG Layers, it's going to export my layer list. Well, there's not much to it, but the other thing it's going to do, and I could grab stuff from X references or additional drawings, but here's some recent new features we added as well that are about to be released. We can pull in the line types from a particular lin file that it found in our options. So I'm going to grab that CTC new line type. And I can also, down here, a couple new options, add the background color to the color column, and I can include plot styles from the current STB. So if it's an STB-based drawing, all those plot styles that I'd shown you, those will show up as options to select in my Excel export. So let's go ahead and do that. Export this out. And we're going to open this right away, and we're going to spend a little bit of time in here. Not too much, but I want to give you a sense of why we're moving to Excel to do all this layer management, especially if we're making something new from scratch. So here's some of those line types that are being exported. They're showing up right in here. Those plot styles, they show up as a drop down. Now what if we're making a whole new layer set? Okay, here's what I would recommend you do in here. Perhaps we're going to use some NCS layering. And what I can do is take advantage of some Excel formatting, Excel formulas, and spell this out pretty easily. So let me show you what this might look like. So I'm going to have C layers, C dash, and then they're going to be site, and then what are these things? Maybe it's a mailbox or something like that, and maybe it's a poll, post. You can already see the point of doing this in Excel is because it's quite a bit quicker, right? Pave, I've got concrete and all these different things. And what about utilities? Storm, I've got sanitary, water. Let's put another water one in there. And then I've got tree deciduous, tree coniferous. And the beauty of this is it's Excel. So what? I can drag and drop things really easily. I don't remember how to do this. And maybe even some of these I have additional fields like struck or pipe. And there's simple Excel formulas that you simply go like this, and so on. And I can kind of take a formulaic approach to building out my layers. Now, how long does it take to type all that stuff up? Think about it, right? And what if I have a similar layer set for my existing layers? Okay, that gets pretty slow and tedious. Well, the only difference with a lot of these is what? There's a V in front, or some other thing, an EX or whatever you prefer. And we can very quickly spell out layer lists in this way. Now that's just Excel trickery. Obviously we've got annotation, hatch layers, but build it out in this way. Build it out in this way. Think about prefixing and suffixing. Layer filtering becomes really advantageous in this way. And then simply come back to your primary tab here. And then I've got my layer list. Take some of these settings as default, and then I'll go through and specify more in them. So perhaps my curb, that shouldn't be a medium line weight, but a thick line weight. And maybe it gets a dashed style. Perhaps on my V layers, those are screen plot styles. Simply type in the colors you want. You can type in Autodesk colors, the ACI colors, or just the word itself. So all those layer settings you would consider plotting, is it frozen, is it locked, all those things show up here. And layer descriptions, of course, those are pretty easy to type in here. A lot quicker than you might work otherwise. Okay, I think we get the idea, right? Really easy, quick to work in here because it's in Excel. And you can do this. We can make kind of a cheating formulaic sheet like this, and then reference that over here. Now we minimize this. We come back to Civil 3D, and we run the Create Edit DWG Layers command in the CIM Manager Suite. I browse out to that Excel file I just created. I'm talking about the current drawing, and I'm going to sync these to the drawing layers. And what I get on the second screen here is a nice preview about what's about to happen. Hit OK to this, and then all my layers show up. So it takes Layer Manager, really speeds up that process. And then we move on, we talk about testing and kind of tweaking some of this stuff. I'll show you how we take our Layer Manager, the current state it's in, we export it, and we'll start to get colors and all sorts of things. Okay, what's next? We said AutoCAD annotation styles is the next set. And not that we can't come back to layers, but you got to get a base set to start with. talking about text styles, dimension styles, Mgr styles. Okay. Perhaps you need a few of these. Always take advantage of Design Center if you've got some from an old template you want to pull in. Some of those can come in quite easily. And then they'll show up in here. Okay, make sure you've got your font set the way you want. Perhaps there's some you don't want in there. This legend one, this annotative text style, I don't want that either. Okay, that one will delete, but the legend one wouldn't delete. Okay. Here's where CIM Manager Suite starts to come into play again. There's a tool called Template Tracker. And among other things, we'll come back to this a few times. In the text styles, objects drop down, we can go and find that legend text style. And it turns out it's being used in a table style. So I can swap that out very easily for standard in this case. And I can get rid of the legend text style. So Template Tracker is something you're going to come back to time and time again as you're creating your new template and as you're bringing in new stuff. So the next category is about Civil 3D object and label styles. Okay, perhaps we've got some styles from our old template we want to bring in. Not all of them, we don't want to just dump them in, but maybe the surface styles. Bring those in like this. And now in my new template, I've got all those surface styles. But what comes with that? A bunch of layers come with it, right? And some of them might be okay, but some maybe I'm not so crazy about. Do I need C-Tuple Major New and C-Tuple Major? I can go find those. C-Tuple Major New. I can swap those out. C-Tuple Major, instead of going into all those text styles. And of course, now I can delete it out of here. And really easily start to clean that up. Okay. So always think about that when you're bringing something in. Blocks with fonts or text styles embedded in them, Civil 3D styles with layers embedded in them. See what it brought in with you. See what it brought in, because it's likely to start making a mess of things. And if you want to take advantage of those old styles, that's great. You don't want to have to recreate them. But use Template Tracker to go and clean those things up. Okay, let's move on. The next one is our object layer settings. That's right in here in our drawing settings. When I create an alignment, when I create a surface, when I create a feature line, what layer does it land on? That's what this is. And this is a pretty slow interface because, well, one, I can't set things at once. I can't copy or set multiple things at once. I can't copy and paste. I can't drag and drop. I don't have time for this stuff. So CIM Manager Suite allows me to export that whole table again to Excel and do my work there. And perhaps there's layers I don't even have created yet. I can just start typing them in here. C align. C assembly, for example. And then maybe my my tables, I can just have all the tables land on C table, for example. And so now I can easily start copying and pasting that layer around. prefixing and suffixing, so it creates a new layer. All that I can type in here as well. And of course, it becomes a little easier because I can just copy and paste. Oftentimes there is reason, I'm a fan of this with pipe networks. There's a reason to have something set like C dash and then use a suffix. And then if we do that and we put asterisk in here, what the asterisk will do is it'll pull in the name of the pipe network. So right now this will be C dash asterisk dash pipe. Well, if the name of my pipe network is storm, it'll make a layer called C dash storm dash pipe. And so we can set that stuff up in here without having to necessarily create that layer. So this is pretty straightforward. Just type in the layers as you want them to be. Save that, come back to Civil 3D. Browse to that Excel file. Now I was typing in a bunch of new layer names that I do want to have this create new layers from, so I will check that on. I hit next. And it tells me the blue is everything that's updated layer that doesn't exist. The green are changes to the settings. I hit OK. Back to my drawing settings. Everything's updated here. I've spent hours in this interface. I'd rather spend 15 minutes. Okay, one of the other things that we didn't quite bring in yet from our basics was some blocks. We've got some legacy company blocks. Those are all good. I still want to work with those. I get the idea. This will serve our purpose of just getting some block definitions in there, because the next thing we're going to use is the Survey Template Manager. And we're going to use that to build out some survey-related items like the description key set and the figure prefix database. But anyway, this is one of the things you want to do at the beginning, is bring those block definitions into your template. Don't leave them on the screen, but you want them in the template. So if I go back to current drawing over here, I'll see those block definitions reside in here. I don't need an instance, but I want them in inside the drawing. All right, our description key set, that's the next piece here. And again, this is survey-related stuff, but we're going to keep this all in the same template as though we have survey and design in one template. I see a number of firms that works for them, oftentimes larger or medium-sized firms. We separate that into 2 or 3 or more templates. So starting off, we'll just make a new description key set. We'll call it CTC. And then the interface to work in here is rather clumsy. It's pretty glitchy as you're making new codes. You can't really do mass editing or drag and dropping in the way you'd want. And so what we've done with CIM Manager Suite has allowed us to export this entire set where we can again edit it in Excel. And the important part is we've got layers we want to set. We've actually got a bunch of new point styles that need to be created. Survey Template Manager is going to help us with a lot of that. So starting off, I'm going to run export description key sets. I'll grab the CTC one and export, and then open this in Excel right away. I don't want some of that junk I typed in there, so I'm going to start typing out the codes that I do want. And you can see already this just gets a lot faster and a lot easier than how it might be in Civil 3D. So I've got some manhole symbols, maybe I've got sanitary pipe and storm pipe. Got those trees. Okay, and you can pretty easily type this stuff out, or if you've got your list elsewhere in Excel, just copy and paste it in here. Okay, the next thing is the point style. The concrete point style, the standard one, just a basic X is good on that. And now we can start to drag and drop this stuff. Standard for all of them. Well, not quite. What about the hydrant one? Well, I don't have any point styles yet. Nor the storm manhole or the deciduous tree. So I can type in a new point style that I want created. Tree deciduous, for example. And it barks at me because it wasn't one of the ones in the drop down there, but I'm okay with that, right? It says the value doesn't match the data validation. Hit okay to that. And what will happen is if we spell out a block here, so notice that it exported all the blocks that we had from our template. It's going to create new ones automatically. So that storm manhole, for example, say we want storm MH, a new point style, and the storm manhole block. So it's automatically going to make a point style with that block inside of it. Okay, the ones that you don't want any kind of point style, you can just delete those out of there if they're just getting the standard one or just a simple cross or X. But you're going to automatically type out, like I said, the point styles you want created for you. Proposed hydrant. Okay. And what next? The point label style. Should they all be standard? Probably not. Some of them, like the tree ones, maybe I want description only point style made for me. You might have the stuff, in that case, drag it into your drawing, those point and point label styles before you export this, and then it'll show up in this list. But if you're starting from scratch, you can have it automatically create these for you. And then the layers, of course. Well, we created those, and those show up right here. So I've got V paved concrete, so on and so forth. Other settings here, if they're all just to be default, you can grab a couple rows and just drag these down. Looks like I missed one there. Maybe these trees, like we said, we want these to scale automatically. So in that case, I would set this to yes, and then check on to have it scale for me. Okay, lots of work there, but way faster in Excel. Now again, we could take advantage of making new tabs in here. We could copy in our field cheat sheet and then reference that over on here. All kinds of things. Because it's Excel, it'll make it really easy to work with. So coming back to Civil 3D, we run the create, edit, description keys. And I simply browse out to that Excel file. I'm going to sync it to the CTC one. And then I get some editing options here. Do I want to sync or add? Okay, if I sync, it's going to delete codes that might be there already. Sync is what it is. It's what it sounds like, right? Additive and subtractive. If I add, it's perhaps if I'm just dumping in another dozen codes or something, but I don't want to delete the ones that already exist in there. So I'm going to do a sync because we had a couple of those junk ones I want to remove from there. And then I've got create new point and label styles. I definitely want that. Those are all those point styles with blocks. I hit next. And it gives me a report again. There's all the new codes to be created. They're colored if they don't exist in the drawing, but it's going to create new styles for us. And then here's those deleted ones. So I can hit OK to this. Gives me a little report what's about to happen. And if I take a look at my key set, all that shows up here. I've got the tree scaling, the layers that I set. Notice if you don't set it, it defaults things to it's the current layer, in fact. And then there's new styles that were made here. Under point styles, I've got hydrant and storm manhole and tree coniferous. If we open those up, we'll see that storm manhole block showing up there. And what the rest of the settings are going to be configured to is they're just based on the default settings in the drawing. So if those are set up ahead of time and you go and auto-generate all these styles, it'll take those default settings. There's that description only. So I'd want to come in here. My detailed style editing still happens in here. Let me bring that down to the description only. Okay. Similar approach for my figure prefix database. If you don't know what that is a similar table to the description key set, but it has to do with your line work. It is, yet again, another interface. You have to manage these codes and some of the settings with them. And this one is, I'd say this one is the worst of all of them. Really kind of glitchy. And again, we can take that out to Excel. And so to start with, you might have noticed it in some of the other commands, but when you do this create, edit, sync command, there's an open sample option there. And if I do that, it's going to give me an Excel sheet that's formatted appropriately, but it's totally empty. And what I mean by formatted is it gives me all my layers that were in that current drawing, that drawing session. If I had styles in there, those show up in here. And now what I might do, because you would do this after your description key set, I might come in here, grab this, and then dump these in to here. Now in a figure prefix database, you don't want that little asterisk, so if you don't know this little trick, you can't just replace asterisk for nothing. You have to put the little squiggly symbol in front of it. So I'm going to replace all, get rid of all of those. And it's the same kind of stuff, right? But way faster, way easier than the native interface. Some of these are no, in fact. Trees, those shouldn't be in here. So my manholes, so this is just for line work, right? Are they lot lines? Don't think so. What layers do they get? Okay, again, pulling from those layers we set. Same with the styles. Default them to standard, or maybe there's use for some unique figure styles. In this case, again, we can override what's in the data validation dropdown and have it generate new styles for us. We'll put in our default site name. We'll save that and come back to Civil 3D. So I run this create, edit, figure prefix database. I'll go and grab that Excel sheet. In this case, I'm creating a new one. I'm not going to sync it to that CTC one. That's an old one, for example. We're going to make a new one. And then I also want to create new survey figure line styles. Again, I get a nice report of what's about to happen. There's my new concrete figure style, new site. Hit OK to this. And there is that figure prefix database showing up. I can create that in just minutes compared to working in that other interface. And then, of course, in our survey figure styles, we get any new styles that we made showing up as well. So that's kind of your first pass through, right? Generating all this stuff. And then what you're going to do, you're going to start testing it, and you're going to find, I don't need that layer, or that doesn't look right, and all this stuff. And what are you going to do? Well, when you bring in those styles, and they bring in layers you don't want, maybe some of those C10 layers, I don't want those, get rid of those. You can, right? And so then you're back to template tracker. Maybe some of these, I don't want that separate tin boundary layer. That can just all go on C10. And it goes on 0. And I can trim those out of there in really a fraction of the time that I might do otherwise. A thing to note, there's a command, some of you might be familiar with it. If you type it in, laydel, what it allows you to do is you can force delete layers. And we could have come here and force deleted the C10 boundary layers. But here's the thing, when you do that, it strips them out of the styles, and it doesn't put anything else in place. Now, if you go and run an audit, it'll actually automatically put 0 in there. But you may, in fact, want some other kind of unique layers, like I swapped out one of the C10 layers for the general C10. So be careful of using this command. It has its place, and it's right up here. If you remember when we did the object layer syncing, we told it to create new layers for us. Well, this is one I didn't want created. I don't actually want the C- layer. I just want it in my object layer settings. So I would use it for this kind of thing, because it'll totally pull it out of there. And it doesn't matter what styles are referencing it or settings are referencing it. But in the case of object layer settings, I'm a big fan of this. So C-, where is that? There it is, for pipe. C- is still in there, but it just holds that same plain text. And then when I go and create a layer, according to these settings, it won't make a C-, it'll make C-, pipe network name, -pipe, for example. So just a little thing to note there. The other thing you might be doing, right, we didn't spend much time with our layer colors. As you're testing this stuff and you're generating objects, how does it look? How does it print? You're going to want to tweak this a bit. And so that original Excel export that we created those layers in, that's kind of an initial pass-through for the first time. Now you can reference that formulaic thing, but what's more likely is you get your layer set close, and then there's tweaking, and when you do that, you can again export this out. So it'll keep all those same settings, export out, and let's see, do I have this closed? Let's close the layer properties. And we'll overwrite the old one. And what you'll see on this export, what we get this time, it starts to give us colors. So it's kind of handy, right? As those colors are set and then we run the export, they will come with us. Of course, all the line types and everything, the plot styles, all that stuff is there. But do your adjusting here. I mean, if it's one or two, just a couple things like that, pretty straightforward. You can do it right in there. But if it's anything like, I've got all these normals, for example, they should be medium. Just come out here and you can swap normal. All that kind of stuff. Find replacing, drag and dropping. a lot easier in here. And then you simply save that out, come back and sync it with that tool right there. If you don't like your line types, simply open up Line Type Manager, tweak those line types a bit, create a new one if you need, and then you also have the insert command right away. So like this fuel and the fiber, I stole that from an old drawing, right? An old project drawing. I can insert these into the current template or drawing. And so now those are saved within the drawing itself. Fuel and fiber. Now when we run the export, of course, it's not just line types that are in the drawing. We can have it export everything from the LIN file so we can select from it, and then it automatically imports it when we bring it back in. Okay, so that's your general process, right? You're jumping around on CIM Manager Suite. You're managing with Layer Boss, your layer settings, and your object layer settings. With Survey Template Manager, you're managing the description key set and the figure prefix database. With Template Tracker, you're going to be in there all the time because there's so many references and old junk you're bringing in that you're trying to get rid of. And then Line Type Manager, pretty straightforward. Visual editing and creation of your line types. And the final step we said, and this isn't necessarily something CIM Manager Suite is going to be a part of because it's pretty straightforward, pretty decent natively, but it's your settings themselves. And so I just want to mention it just to kind of complete the circle. At a drawing level, you've got ambient settings where you're controlling basic things like some of the behavior of tooltips and event viewer, and then you want to start diving into categories. So if I right click on surface, I've got feature settings, what are my default styles, and then diving into commands, and you want to work in that order: drawing level, category level, and then command specific, like the command add surface break lines. You'll see the little green double checkbox. These are default settings for your templates when someone runs the create break lines command. Things like mid-ordinate distance and supplementing factors, these play a big part in how your surfaces are created. So save that to the end. Save that settings configuration towards the end because you need all those styles and layers and everything in place for you to set them as default. Plus, you won't even know a lot of the stuff until you get to the phase right before this, which was all the testing and tweaking. So here's that workflow we went through, all those different categories. Some of these you might bounce back and forth between, obviously, but that's kind of the general approach I take to creating a new template totally from scratch, or if perhaps my old one is so corrupt I've saved it forward 10 times, it's really slow, there's all kinds of extra stuff in it, go and make a new blank one and then bring in the stuff you need. So just a few things in conclusion, at this template work, it doesn't have to be difficult. The difficult part is like getting everyone to agree on the same font or the same CTB or that kind of stuff. That's a whole other thing. That requires counseling. But when you're doing the actual work, it can be pretty simple. And so with the CIM Manager Suite, what we're doing is managing all the major table type interfaces by syncing to Excel. Instead of working in those slow interfaces, move to Excel where there's any number of things, right? It's faster, it's more flexible. You can have someone else do it, right? You can give that Excel sheet to your survey manager and say, hey, type your codes up so I can, or give me those updates, and then you can sync it back to your template. We can track all those different references. This is one of the things that can be a huge headache. Where's this textile being used? Where's this layer being used? We can easily find and swap out those different references. Of course, we can build line types visually with Line Type Manager. And the point of all this, right? The better templates make for a more productive staff. You guys are supporting these teams. The better workflows, the better templates you can make for them, the more productive they will be. So a number of you guys have this already. If you're asking how do I get this, it's pretty straightforward. Go to our website. It's a CIM Manager Suite page. Details on all these different tools, what they do, descriptions. Okay. If you're in the US, contact ATG. If you're in Canada, contact SolidCAD, or just contact right here. So pretty easy. Network licensing, standalone licensing, all kinds of options there.